broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, welcome to our extended disc webinar today. It's a 30-minute webinar. Unfortunately, as with other webinars, because we want to pack in the content, we're not going to have the opportunity for live questions. However, we do encourage you to put your questions in the question box below, and I promise we'll follow up with you after the webinar today. So today's, I am joined by my guest, President of Extended Disc North America, Markku Kauppinen. Welcome.
Hi, Christine. How are you?
Good. You sound a little hoarse.
Yeah, I have getting over a bad cold. I went to New York last week, and it was not the warmest time to go to visit New York.
What was it? What do they call it? That cyclone you got hit with?
Cyclone bomb or something.
Yeah.
It landed on me.
Oh gosh. So it really is Markku sitting next to me, if you know the sound of his voice. My name is Christina. I'm the host today. I'm a senior trainer here at Extended Disc, and our topic today is something that I think is great. It's how is Extended Disc different from disc? I know as trainers here, and I know Markku has been asked this question all the time, but how is extended disc different from disc? And oftentimes we get asked this question by people who are taking the disc assessment, like, oh, I've already taken disc. Do I need to take it again? And my response usually is, oh, have you ever taken extended disc? Just to kind of start that conversation. And then I come across a lot of people that I train, coaches and facilitators, who have already taken some type of disc training or are familiar with disc, and they would just like some clarification on the difference. So I wanted Markku to talk about and address the question. You know, some people don't even know there's a difference between disc assessments, but what is the difference between extended disc and disc? But before he starts, I wanted to make sure he kind of gave us a little bit of background and history on disc. So Markku, can you take it away?
Sure, and this is by far the most frequently asked question.
I've
been doing this over 20 years, and I don't think there has been one day I've not been asked this question. But let's start with how disc and extended disc are similar. Disc model, like many of the behavioral style assessments, and really they go back to the Jungian four-quadrant model that was developed back in 1921. And a few years later, Marston in 1928 named those four quadrants disc. And people sometimes think that somebody owns disc, but the reality is that no one owns disc. The model is, though the theory is in public domain. Some people even call it an open source. You know, we get into that technology age, so it's open source, but nobody owns it. But what extended disc is based on that model, that theory. So I think because almost 100% of our clients use some disc assessment in the past. But I think the reason so many of them upgraded to extended disc is that they don't have to learn new concepts. So if they're familiar with what D style is all about, and other three styles, the transition is so easy.
Yeah, I agree with that. So Markku, let's talk about why do people actually choose disc?
I think number one reason is that it's easy to learn. It's simple. You're talking about four behavioral styles, D, I, S, and C, and people begin to use that very quickly. It's very easy to implement, and it essentially becomes a common language, especially when managers play an active role in terms of asking questions about, for example, hey, salesperson, what style was your prospect you just called on? And that makes the employees to really think about it. Not only do they think about the styles of other people, but very clearly they begin to think about who they are. They create that confident self-awareness, and most importantly, they begin to modify their behavior, how they communicate, how they sell, how they lead, and so on. So the bottom line with this is that it's easy to practice and people begin to modify their behavior.
Yeah, and I think, you know, just in summary, looking at the big picture, we're trying to help a person, right, to make clear decisions on how to modify their behaviors to become more successful.
Exactly, yes.
So big picture. But then flip it. You know, sometimes I hear that disc is too simple. There's criticism of disc. How do you address that?
Well, I think as starting point, I think a lot of that criticism has been well-founded.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people felt that disc has been, like you said, too simple. It really kind of lacks the depth to really understand who the individuals are. And people who use other disc tools, and they often, when I tell this, that's happened to me, is that people make comments like, well, I took the disc 6 months ago and I used to be, let's say, an IS style. And now I took it again yesterday and now I'm a DI style. So what would happen is that the results would have good, what we call a face validity, because the respondent feels that it reflects who I need to be right now. But there's no retest validity. And it makes it very difficult to really have a clear, good understanding of who the person actually is.
Okay. So in terms of the information that you get from the tools out there that aren't quite, that focus on the current or that good face validity, why does it skew the development?
Well, the results change over time. It kind of, in essence, it gives us a starting point that is not accurate because we don't really know who the person actually is. It's kind of like the first date versus who you actually end up in a relationship with.
I love that.
So in situations like that, when people were using DISC in the past, they often looked at tools like Myers-Briggs. I think a lot of our audience members are familiar with Myers-Briggs. It's a great tool because it really identifies that hardwired personality type. And when people take Myers-Briggs MBTI over time, the results do not change typically. It's very uncommon for the results to change. But some people find the MBTI a little bit cumbersome because it uses that four-letter combination. I think it's a fantastic tool for self-discovery, but typically if you ask training participants 3 months after training, what is their four-letter combination, a lot of people can't remember that. And if you realize they can't remember that, the chances are very unlikely that they begin to think about what is the personality type of my customer, my colleague, and so on. And it becomes a little cumbersome in really making specific modifications in behavior. And I think that's ultimately what we're trying to achieve. It's good to know who you are, but ultimately we try to figure out how do I best modify my behavior with others to become more successful.
Right. So with DISC, you just have to remember one letter. You have to identify someone with one letter. But with MBTI, as powerful a tool as it is and well respected, there's just more letters you have to remember to not only to identify yourself, but then you have to put those 4 letters on somebody else.
Yeah, beyond the self-discovery, I don't think most employees are really able to practice it because it's a little bit more complex to learn and use.
Right, and when you don't practice, you don't use it.
That's right. And really, what this did is when we looked at developing extended DISC about 30 years ago, we really wanted to combine the best of both worlds. One, let's keep the user-friendliness of the DISC model, but let's identify the hardwired DISC style. So now we have an accurate starting point for development. When people retake extended DISC over time, the results remain quite stable. We don't expect to see changes in what the DISC style is. And the benefit of that is we know who they actually are, and we have the clear starting point helping them to improve their performance.
Right. So it just kind of makes people stop and think, hey, is that really me? So can you talk a little bit more about the differences between that hardwired style?
Yeah, this is really important. This is what our clients tell us all the time, that probably one of the main reasons they like extended DISC. If you look at this axis, where on one end we have the conscious behavior, other end we have the unconscious behavior. With conscious behavior, I'm talking about how I think I need to behave at work. It's the kind of behavioral style that I believe as the employee will create success for me. And typically we adjust our style to fit into corporate culture. We try to respond what our boss is expecting from us. But this behavior, because it's adjusted, it does take more energy. And other end, we have the unconscious behavior, which is actually who we truly are. Some people call this the home behavior, when I'm relaxed, when I can be who I really am, because it takes less energy. But this is who we are. And this is basically, if you think about when there's an unexpected situation or we under pressure, we revert to this style. So traditionally, what DISC tools have done, they really focus on the conscious behavioral style. And that is the reason that the results would change over time, because the environment will change, that work role will change. Not only there are different types of demands, but our perception of what creates success will change over time. At Extended DISC, we focus on the unconscious behavior. I say that 99% of we should focus on who the person actually is. And when we not only look at the unconscious behavioral style, but we look at how the person perceives they need to modify their style right now. But our clear focus, Christina, is always on that unconscious behavior, that hardwired DISC style.
In fact, I think Markku always reiterates to the trainers, 99% of the report is going to focus on your hardwired natural style.
And the reason is because we want to know who the person is. And if we want to develop them, we need to know where to start.
And I think that's why pressure behavior is so important too, because under pressure, we just don't have that ability to modify our behavior. So I always say, under pressure, we become more of who we are.
Yeah, if you really want to know who your coworkers are, see how they react when the fire alarm goes.
Yeah, exactly.
You see who they are.
And then just the other thing is, with conscious behavior, it's our belief or our perception of how we need to adjust. But just because it's your belief that you will be more successful if you make that adjustment doesn't automatically make you successful.
That is very true. But I do believe that no matter what your DISC style is, that hardwired DISC style is, you can be very successful. But I think if you think about successful people, in whoever your heroes are, no matter what their DISC style is, they're all very confidently self-aware. And we want to really create that confident self-awareness by showing who they actually are, their strengths, their development areas, and their blind spots.
And then, so look at me looking at this slide. You're saying extended DISC measures both, and there are traditional DISC tools out there that only focus on the conscious behavior. My question, obviously, is, well, why wouldn't we measure both? It just makes sense.
Well, of course, I'm maybe a biased source here, but yeah, I think it's really important to find out who you actually are.
Right.
It's like when you go to a doctor, you want to make sure they have accurate information to make the proper diagnosis so they know what the next step in treatment is.
I don't want to have surgery on an inaccurate diagnosis.
That's right.
So, yeah, I think, and also it's just more challenging to be able to develop a tool based on that unconscious hardwired behavior. It's very easy to create a tool because if you're like, hey, I'm D today, you answer the question, you're going to come out D.
Yeah, certainly a lot of the development work went into the questionnaire design to be able to get that hardwired DISC style.
Yeah, not all DISC tools measure the same thing. I understand that too. So what else is different about extended DISC versus other DISC assessments?
I probably think the second most common thing that we hear from our clients is that they like the fact that we have tailored assessments. And what that means in practice is that not only in DISC world, but in assessment world in general, assessment companies typically provide a handful of off-the-shelf reports. Here's your report for a leadership report, here's your sales assessment, and so on. And that may work well in many situations, but we believe that if you provide the participants information that they actually need that's relevant for them, it's much more effective. So with our platform, you're able to tailor the assessments, not only for things like the content, look and feel, kind of images we have, but to really make them specific to their job roles or make them specific to their industry or their culture. Because when the participant gets a report that they react to it, even before reading it, that, hey, this is for me, their response is completely different. Not only is it easier for the participant to use that report, but we actually found that it's much more easy for the facilitator to coach because then you don't get the pushback. Well, that's not quite for me, and that creates what I call excuse factor. That kind of goes away completely.
So, Markku, can we show them a couple examples?
Yeah, let's do that. So, obviously, if we have what we call individual assessment, and by the way, within that group, you can adjust it for content, the length, and so on. If you're doing a 90-minute session, you only want to provide them a very concise report. You can do that very easily. You can later reprocess it in a longer format if you do a follow-up session. So we can do the individual, and we can move on to, let's say, leadership assessments. If we're more of a middle manager, maybe leadership may sound a little bit too lofty. We would have a manager assessment. Again, they complete the same questionnaire you can provide in different formats. We do a lot of work with universities, so individual assessment is not as relevant. But when we look at their behaviors, like their learning style and things like that, the student really respond to it because not only talking about specific things that they experience every day, but when we change the images to younger people and talk about university education, etc., the response is completely different. Stress and time management, everybody wants to know about that. And Christina, the way it works is that the person again completes the questionnaire one time. Mm-hmm. And let's say you provide an individual assessment the first time. Maybe a couple of weeks later, a couple of months later, you want to have a little session about stress and time management. You don't have to ask that employee or the employees rather to complete the questionnaire again. You simply log into your admin site and you reorder the results in a different format. It's very simple to do. And finally, I mentioned about adjusting it to specific jobs and industries. Like, let's say we provide a customer service assessment to somebody, and it has a lot of wide application.
Mm-hmm.
But assume for a moment that I'm a bank teller. Well, as a teller, I can think, hey, I'm in customer service. However, customer services banking is a little bit different. But if we provide them an assessment that is actually teller assessment, the response is completely different.
So some of these reports may excite you. Some of these reports, the amount of reports may overwhelm you. So we have a little bit of reports for everyone. We always say if you don't know what report to use, you can just stick to the individual report. It works for everyone.
That's correct. And some of our clients, as you know, Christina, they want very specific reports. And like we talk about, let's say, sales report. Well, maybe in the industry when sales is not really the right word, maybe we change to business development. Now, again, the participants respond to the results much better, and they really begin to use the assessment results as a starting point for modifying their behaviors.
Okay, so Markku, let's go ahead and show them the multi-person reports.
Yeah, let's jump into team reports. Those are, very popular. Team assessments too, we can customize and tailor for different type of needs. We talking about kind of intact group. Maybe we call it team assessment. Maybe I'm a sales manager and I want to look at my sales folks. So then I may want to provide a report that's called a sales team assessment. Not only is the look and feel a bit different, and it's called something else, but the information in the report is going to be different. Here it's going to be focused on sales behaviors, obviously, since we're dealing with sales professionals.
These are just a couple samples of team reports we have. So we even have a variety of team reports. And again, as Markku mentioned, you can definitely customize them even further.
Yeah, and then we create new ones for our clients all the time. We work with them to find out what kind of information, how much of information they need. Key point being that let's make it relevant for their applications so they really get most of the assessments.
Right. And then we also, of course, have
the pair reports. This is a great tool to help two individuals who work together to become more successful. Wonderful tool onboarding new employees for a manager. Hey, I'm a manager, Christina, I look forward to working with you. Let's look at how we can more effectively work together from the very start. Of course, then we have the popular couples report, completely different application, but the process the same. And again, I want to really emphasize that with all of these reports, each person needs to complete the questionnaire only one time. So all of these few examples we shared, you could run them all and you only pay once.
Exactly.
And then we have the new one we call the conflict resolution assessment. Maybe the onboarding didn't go so well and we have some conflicts. Now we provide third-party, independent, unbiased information in a little different format that hopefully will help the two employees work more productively together.
Yeah. So we always tell you, if your client asks for a specific report, you're not sure if we have it or not, always say yes, because we can always customize. I think one of the strengths that I'm most proudest about in terms of the extended DISC assessment is the validity, the strength of we stand behind our tool. So can you talk a little bit about that, Markku?
Absolutely. And we talked a little while ago that it's important to really identify who the person actually is. But of course, the follow-up question is that, can I really trust the results? And what we have built into extended DISC is what I call the internal validity checks. What it really actually prevents happening is this. There are a lot of assessment tools out there that if a person even just blindly or randomly selects responses, you still get an assessment result. And if you really pause and think about that for a moment, you quickly realize that that cannot be valid information. If somebody doesn't even read the options and they still just make selections, you still get a result. How can it be valid? So in extended DISC, what we have is these validity checks. And maybe a person is simply distracted. Maybe we're tired or they were doing something, were multitasking while they were completing the questionnaire. We can detect when the validity is not there. Rather than providing a report that we think might be accurate, we don't provide an assessment result. We simply ask the person to complete it again. Sometimes people try to game the questionnaire. They want to project a different image than they actually are. And extended DISC would prevent that from happening.
Yeah, and I think this type of check is so critical. And then, as coaches and people who deliver DISC out there, oftentimes it's not unusual to get challenged to say, hey, how do I know your DISC tool really does what it says it does? And we have that validation to back it up, right?
Yes, and not only global validation, that you actually cannot have a global validation. There's differences in languages, etc. Our assessments are internationally validated. The questionnaires come in about 70 languages. They're validated for all of those. And as you know, Christina, it is critical that the respondent is able to complete the questionnaire in their native language. If they can't do it, if you can't provide that option, you really don't know if you can trust the results. That's the only way to do it. And we internationally validate it and also revalidate it every few years because we use words and languages are living things, and we want to make sure that over time the validity is always there.
Yeah, so I think that is a clear distinction for what's different between extended DIS and other DIS tools out there is that we back up our tool.
That's right.
So another thing that excites me, because this is our newest platform, we have the ability to not only manage everything online, but you have the opportunity to look at the DIS data without actually having to generate a report or to look at a report. You know, we've worked with clients where they are able to look at the DIS profiles that have at a higher rate left their organization. You can look at DIS profiles from an organizational standpoint. You can view the DIS data of your teams in the admin site without actually having to generate a paper copy of it, which is amazing.
Yeah, you look at the results live on screen without having to actually get the reports and get a conference room table and spread them all out. You can do real-time analysis.
Real-time analysis. That's the term I'm looking for. So yeah, and we have actually gotten a lot of great tips from our clients on how they actually utilize the data on their DIS platform. So administration, being able to manage and access your DISC information.
Yeah, clients certainly bring that up often.
Yeah. And I know something Markku is very proud of, he's going to talk about is our support services.
Yeah, this has always been a very personal issue for me because when we started the Extended DIS North America, one of my key goals was to make sure we provide the best client support in the industry. And that's certainly something we hear from our clients every day, and we'll continue to strive to get better and better at it. But when I talk about support, there's a couple of kind of support. One is some technical support. You know, how do I generate reports? How do I tailor these assessments? And that's, of course, always available. But I think one of the key support factors is how do we support our facilitators? Because as you know, as a coach here, you get those calls, hey, I have a session coming up in 30 minutes, and it's a quick question. For them to be able to call you and get that question answered is so critical. And to provide support materials, whether it's for the participants or facilitators, through our online resource center, where they can access PowerPoints, exercises, handouts at no cost. I think it then creates something that is just a more valuable offering than just an assessment report.
I agree. So there's a lot to back up the DISC report itself. So anything else you want to talk about?
I think one thing that has come up frequently, especially in the last couple of years, is that we have different kind of pricing options. We certainly offer the kind of conventional per assessment pricing. Even there, we're a little bit different is because it's actually per person pricing. You have a person complete the questionnaire once, and you get all of these reports, and we just saw a couple of examples. You don't have to pay for those additional reports, and also you don't have to waste your employees' time having them complete the questionnaires over and over again. But we also have what we call these licenses. One is what we call an unlimited use license, which means that our clients pay a fixed fee and they can use as many assessments as they want to, typically over a 12-month period. Even the time period can be adjusted. We have clients who have 36-month licenses, and again, they just pay a fixed fee. And what it really allows us, a client, to do is two things. One is important. They save money, so they can typically have a fixed budget that they need to allocate to different training initiatives. Now they have those funds available to something else. But second is it's very predictable. You know exactly how much you're going to spend. And of course, these licenses are tailored to a client unique needs. Client that has 10,000 employees probably would pay more than a client that has 1,000 employees. So we work with our clients to really make them tailored to not only the organization size, but the applications of the assessments.
And then, of course, Extended DIS, we support our affiliates and our customers and our clients, right? So how do we do that?
Well, of course, the certification or train the trainer, we have several options there that allows the trainers to get some recertification credits. And probably not a good use of time to go into all the details, but to say that we have several options is the best way to really conclude that topic. And just to go to our website to find a little bit more about that, or contact us, and we certainly can be very help there with those questions, and make sure that ultimately what we're trying to do is make sure the facilitators feel very comfortable and confident using the tools. And with this trainer certification and the ongoing support, that's what we try to achieve.
Yeah. So hopefully what we've helped with you today is to, okay, of course, understand what the difference is between extended disc and other disc tools. Also, even for those of you or your clients who are considering upgrading to extended disc, hopefully we've provided some clarification there as well. So, Markku, any kind of last thoughts before we sign off?
Well, I guess the last thing, that our mission is really to provide user-friendly tools that people actually use, and we provide information that is very accurate, so people can make decisions confidently about how to best modify their behavior. And speaking of confidence, we want to make sure that our facilitators really believe that they can be very comfortable and confident, not only delivering the assessments, improving the performance of their employees, but make sure that they can have the confidence that I have the support when I need it.
Exactly. Well, thank you for joining me today, Markku. I hope you feel better soon. This will be recorded, or this has been recorded. We'll be publishing it probably within the next few days on our public website. So in case you want to share this with any of your coworkers or affiliates, it will be there. So thank you all for joining us. And until next time, we do have a webinar coming up, I believe, on January 24th.
That's right.
And we will be talking about goal setting.
I think it's a timely topic. People are thinking about New Year and making resolutions and how they can improve. So let's talk about how DISC can help in that process.
Sounds great. All right. Have a wonderful day, people.